On live broadcasts, Nancy Pelosi aimed her finger and labeled Tulsi Gabbard a Kremlin asset who belonged behind bars. Yet she remained unaware that the military veteran seated across the chamber carried a tan folder that would forever obliterate her 4-decade reputation within exactly 2 hours. Director Gabbard, you operate as a Russian asset. You convened with Assad. You crossed our democratic coalition. You work for an authoritarian executive who deployed the National Guard against American youth. You belong inside a cell, not summoning the most tenured speaker in contemporary United States history. Nancy Pelosi jabbed her index finger across the Senate committee chamber. That identical hand had just taken a pledge upon a Bible 10 minutes prior. Adam Schiff rested beside her, bobbing his head gravely. Tulsi Gabbard remained completely still. A military notebook rested in her left grip. A yellow folder sat on the desk. Massive miscalculation. The events of the following 2 hours terminated Nancy Pelosi's political footprint on live C-SPAN. Crush that thumbs-up icon immediately. Subscribe and comment the word subpoena. You are about to observe the most absolute political dismantling in modern United States congressional history. The location was Hart Senate Office Building hearing space 2 Scene at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning in April. The C-SPAN network was broadcasting. Fox News was airing coverage. The viewing areas had reached capacity by 7. 50% of the crowd sported AOC badges and labor shirts. The remaining 50% consisted of military veterans, Capitol Police widows, and 3 prior intelligence officials who departed during the initial Trump administration and silently came back during the latter. Senator Tom Cotton rested at the middle of the platform. On his left sat the testimony desk where Nancy Pelosi had recently taken her oath. 85 years of age, wearing a cream Armani trouser suit and a lone necklace of 26 pearls she had sported for 3 decades. Adam Schiff rested next to her, acting as private representation. On Cotton's right rested the alternate testimony desk. Tulsi Gabbard, 44, dressed in a dark gray trouser suit with military footwear beneath the pant hems, an ODNI lapel badge, a tiny leather combat diary in her left grip that she carried through 2 overseas tours, and a yellow class folder secured with the insignia of the Director of National Intelligence in her right grasp. Next to her rested Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. 3 weeks prior, Tulsi had unsealed the Inspector General documents supporting the 2019 impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump. Those records revealed the informant grievance was constructed using indirect proof and ideologically prejudiced testifiers. The Senate Select Intelligence Committee had summoned Pelosi, the official who initiated the impeachment, and provided Tulsi with interrogation privileges. Pelosi's lips had pursed when Cotton uttered the phrase regarding interrogation. "Madam Speaker," he stated, "you can commence delivering your introductory remarks." She grabbed the audio receiver using both of her palms. Over the subsequent 9 minutes, she talked using the rhythm she had utilized across 5 decades of media briefings. It was the rhythm of a politician who understood how to deliver a quote for the nightly broadcasts. It was the rhythm of someone who, prior to that dawn, had never occupied a testimony seat under a sworn pledge in her entire existence. She labeled Donald Trump as the Mussolini residing at Mar-a-Lago. She branded the Republican coalition a fatalistic sect disguised within a banner. She claimed the Trump Justice Department was mobilized to target her, to target Senator Schiff, and to target every citizen who cast a ballot in opposition to him. She argued the subsequent Trump presidency had initiated a crusade of partisan retribution unparalleled within United States history. Afterward, she pivoted gradually to confront Tulsi Gabbard. "Director Gabbard," she stated, "I need to be absolutely precise regarding your true identity." She never batted an eyelash. "You lack any legitimate standing within the national security sector. You dedicated the previous 10 years to protecting Bashar al-Assad, an individual who poisoned his own youth. You echoed Moscow's disinformation regarding Ukraine to such a degree that even Mitt Romney labeled your actions treasonous. The legislative chamber narrowly approved your nomination by 52 to 48. 50% of this institution views you as a homeland defense threat." She raised one isolated digit. You convened with Assad during 2017 covertly, lacking permission from your political faction or your federal administration. You championed Edward Snowden, an individual who pilfered restricted documents and escaped to Moscow. You rested on Tucker Carlson's sofa and debated if United States biological facilities inside Ukraine were manufacturing biological arms. You recited Russian falsehoods verbatim. The digit shifted, aiming straight across the chamber. And currently you have exploited the position of the National Intelligence Director to unseal files strategically and opportunistically in order to assault the exact organizations that defended this nation against Donald Trump during 2019. Her tone elevated. She captured her spectators. The liberal portion of the balcony leaned forward. You operate as a Russian operative who double-crossed the Democratic coalition. You conferred with a military felon. You belong behind bars. You lack the right to sit here interrogating me. The United States populace sees right past this. Historical records will see right past this. Adam Schiff bobbed his head. He had been bobbing his head throughout the whole duration. A fragmented wave of clapping erupted from the progressive wing of the balcony before Cotton's mallet silenced the noise. "Maintain decorum in this chamber," Cotton stated. "Director Gabbard, you can continue with your interrogation." Tulsi avoided answering right away. She glanced at the yellow class folder. She stared directly at Pelosi. The chamber stood still. When she finally communicated, her tone was softer than Pelosi's previous volume. "Madam Speaker," she stated, "I arrived here this morning not to argue, but to recite." She positioned her right palm atop the folder and ruptured the closure. If you are viewing this broadcast immediately, cease swiping down, press subscribe, and type the word subpoena using uppercase characters. You are poised to witness what occurs when a military service member holding a document file confronts a career politician taking a sworn pledge. Tulsi extracted the initial picture from the package and placed it upon the testimony desk. She held back from pushing it in Pelosi's direction just yet. She allowed the recording lenses to focus on it beforehand. It was an arrest portrait, processing picture from the state of California's Napa County Sheriff's Office. The male featured in the snapshot was 82 years of age. His white locks were messy in the specific manner that hair only becomes messy at 3 o'clock in the dawn while sitting inside the rear of a police cruiser. The pupils appeared bloodshot. The processing digit sequence was apparent across his torso. The individual was Paul Pelosi. Pelosi identified the image before the recording technicians noticed. Her fingers reached for her necklace, the initial turning point. "Madam Speaker," Tulsi stated, "prior to addressing the 2019 impeachment proceedings, I need to pose an inquiry regarding a distinct evening, specifically the 28th of May, 2022. Do you recall your exact location on that particular evening?" I was traveling overseas," Pelosi stammered. "In what location, Madam Speaker?" A brief hesitation. "Brussels." "And what activities were you pursuing in Brussels?" "I was convening with NATO commanders, validating America's dedication toward the regulation-driven global framework." "Could you detail your meal from that specific evening, Madam Speaker?" Schiff tilted his body forward. "Mr. Chairman, I question the pertinence regarding the Speaker's evening meal." Tulsi avoided glancing toward Schiff. She kept her eyes fixed upon Pelosi. "Madam Speaker," she signed, "I smamatal. Isain inform you precisely what you consumed." "The diplomatic agency per diem logs indicate your committee financed a business supper at the Cercle Royal Gaulois. The banquet featured 6 distinct plates. Sparkling wine was served. Celebratory speeches were made. The meal concluded at exactly 11 o'clock evening hours, local Brussels time." Tulsi hesitated briefly. "It was exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon back in Napa, California, when your supper wrapped up." "Madam Speaker, what events were unfolding in Napa, California while you were raising glasses with NATO officials?" Pelosi offered no response. "Madam Speaker, while you elevated a goblet alongside the Belgian diplomacy secretary, Your 82-year-old spouse sat restrained inside the rear compartment of a California highway patrol vehicle. He had been extracted from the debris of a Porsche. That automobile belonged to you. He was operating the vehicle while intoxicated by liquor. Another occupant occupied the chair beside him. Tulsi allowed the term occupant to linger for a couple of seconds. That occupant was a female. That occupant was outside your family lineage. That occupant was unassociated with your professional staff. The prosecution records from Napa County, serving as open documentation, designate the occupant as, quoting directly, an intimate associate of the defendant, end quotation. The liberal segment of the balcony fell completely silent. Madam Speaker, while you resided in Brussels honoring the regulation-driven global framework, your spouse was facing detention in Napa alongside another female inside your automobile. Pelosi's fingers curled the necklace twice. Director, this remains a private issue. My partner's health condition. Health condition, Madam Speaker? Tulsi flipped the subsequent picture upwards. It displayed the law enforcement documentation. The blood toxicity measurement showed clearly near the upper margin using crimson ink, 0.082, exceeding the lawful threshold. The automobile model, a Porsche 911. The intersection involved Walnut Lane and Oakville Crossroad. The timestamp marked exactly 1:02 in the nighttime. The detaining deputy's written account indicated that Paul Pelosi attempted presenting the deputy with a badge classifying him as a Defense Department subcontractor. He never functioned as a Defense Department subcontractor. He possessed absolutely no such clearance. That badge represented the type of item a male produces around 3 o'clock in the morning, hoping to dodge processing. Madam Speaker, Tulsi declared, your spouse attempted to display a forged national permit toward a California highway officer to escape an intoxicated driving charge with another female inside the vehicle. The quietness within the chamber mirrored the quietness of a crowd that had remained ignorant concerning the additional female detail. The Pelosi administration had suppressed it over 4 consecutive years, utilizing a mix of journalistic influence, restricted files, and the basic reality that nobody wished to become the journalist who inquired. Schiff attempted intervening again. Mr. Chairman, the impeachment summons does not permit. Tulsi faced him directly for the initial moment. Her volume remained steady. Senator Schiff, the interrogation privileges bestowed by this panel encompass every subject pertaining to the reliability of the testifier. Intoxicated driving alongside an intimate associate inside the household automobile of an active House Speaker while she executes statecraft in Brussels addresses the reliability of the official who initiated an impeachment relying upon a telephone conversation she never personally monitored. Sir, kindly advise your client to address the inquiry. Schiff unhinged his jaw, sealed it shut, and glanced at Pelosi. Pelosi avoided returning his glance. Cotton, the protest is dismissed. Director Gabbard, kindly proceed. Tulsi abandoned the topic of Paul Pelosi. She shifted focus. Madam Speaker, your spouse received a penalty of 5 days inside the Napa County Detention Center. 5 days. The absolute ceiling under the legislation you co-authored, the legislation you championed alongside Mothers Against Drunk Driving and authorized into reality during 2007. That absolute ceiling stood at 6 months. Tulsi extracted a third file. The manual laborer from San Joaquin County, who received a conviction for an initial DUI offense during May of 2022, the identical month as your spouse, completed 60 days. He forfeited his professional transportation license for 12 months. He forfeited his position at the processing facility. His spouse initiated dissolution proceedings during October. Their 2 offspring relocated to reside alongside his mother within Stockton. He has avoided operating a commercial rig ever since. His identity exists within the open judicial records. It remains absent from this packet because he does not represent the central problem. The central problem remains that your spouse completed 5 days. The manual laborer completed 60. The legislation remained identical. She placed the file down. Madam Speaker, explain to this panel what sort of nation possesses dual tiers of justice. One for the spouse of the Speaker and another for the individual who operates the commercial rig. The necklace, the third turning point. Pelosi's opposite hand stretched toward the hydration tumbler. The tumbler vibrated noticeably. She refrained from drinking. She placed it back securely. I remain unable to address penalty determinations. That fell under the prosecutor's judgment. The prosecutor serving Napa County, Madam Speaker, functioned as your financial contributor. His electoral reporting documents reside within this packet. He obtained $14,000 originating from the Pelosi for Congress organization between 2016 and 2022, within a district your spouse faced detention inside, following his automobile crash there, following his identity processing there. Pelosi shut her eyelids for a fraction of a second. The recording lenses captured the motion. Madam Speaker, the manual laborer residing in Stockton lacked a political action organization. The balcony refrained from clapping. This constituted a formal proceeding, yet the female sporting the Lebanon badge in the rear row lifted her palm toward her lips, and the military veterans occupying the second row tilted forward within their seats. If you are viewing this broadcast right now, and you recall when this narrative surfaced, when the Pelosi administration suppressed the female occupant detail for 4 consecutive years, and the media permitted it, type the term husband into the comment section, type the letters out, crush that thumbs up icon immediately, subscribe and activate notifications. There exist 4 additional packets inside that package. The subsequent one carries more weight. Tulsi avoided resting between stages. She reached inside the package and extracted the second packet, colored green. The insignia near the upper edge stated United States House of Representatives Office of the Clerk Financial Disclosure Reports. Madam Speaker, we shall pivot to the issue regarding how a government employee collecting $174,000 annually amasses a private fortune exceeding $250 million. She unsealed the packet. There existed 0 charts, 0 graphs, 0 presentation slides. There existed a lone sheet of parchment holding a lone phrase upon it. She recited the phrase. Madam Speaker, when you assumed your position within the United States Congress during 1987, your household possessed a value of $3 million. Presently, your household holds a value ranging from $250 million to $400 million. The precise number relies upon the appraisal of the Napa wine estate. The quietness within the chamber possessed a distinct texture now. It represented the quietness of 300 individuals calculating mathematics inside their minds. Madam Speaker, explain to this panel, how exactly does that occur? Pelosi responded, my spouse operates as an entrepreneur. Paul holds private equity real estate. Paul Pelosi manages financial leasing services, a San Francisco enterprise, Tulsi stated. The enterprise's fundamental revenue stream involves corporate property and equities transactions, specifically option contracts concerning technology firms. Tulsi avoided extracting a schedule of transactions. She avoided reciting the corporate names. She extracted a single picture. It displayed a broad perspective of a slope within Napa Valley. Lines of grapes extending from the immediate view toward a dusk horizon. Near the middle of the photograph, a masonry and timber mansion featuring a ceramic roof. The specific style of residence that lands inside Architectural Digest beneath the caption regarding a household's heritage within wine territory. This represents your residence in St. Helena, Madam Speaker. The Pelosi household wine estate, 10 acres acquired during 2009. The acquisition cost stood at $16 million. The contemporary appraisal sits nearer to 30. She extracted the second picture. It was captured from roughly 12 inches above the pavement along Market Street, San Francisco. The photographic perspective felt low because the journalist had knelt upon his knees. The photograph revealed a male wearing an olive military combat coat resting atop crushed cardboard. His footwear sat arranged carefully next to him. A tiny United States banner had been wedged between the strings of a single boot. The banner represented the variety they distribute during military burials. Madam Speaker, this represents an individual named Robert Holcomb. He sits at 78 years of age. He completed 2 deployments within Vietnam. He was documented by an independent reporter near the intersection of Market and 7th on the 18th of December 2025, exactly 6 weeks prior. The reporter verified his background using his Veterans Affairs documentation. Mr. Holcomb has resided along Market Street for 3 consecutive years. He rests within a 40-minute commute from your wine estate. Tulsi positioned the pair of pictures adjacent to each other atop the testimony desk. The mansion situated above the grapes, the military veteran positioned upon the cardboard. She required absolutely no additional words. The recording lenses executed the heavy lifting. The military veterans, occupying the second row of the balcony, ceased leaning forward. They rested exceptionally motionless. Madam Speaker, 6,000 individuals slumber across the pavement within your jurisdiction tonight. Your jurisdiction harbors the greatest per capita vagrancy ratio among every congressional district across the United States. The open philanthropic documentation indicates that you, alongside your spouse, contributed $3 million toward vagrancy programs throughout a 38-year span. That amount represents exactly 1% of your total wealth. The typical American household, the citizens you claim you advocate for, contributes 2.1%. The laboring individuals inside your personal jurisdiction contribute a higher proportion than you manage. Schiff initiated a lean toward his audio receiver. Tulsi faced him before he attained his goal. Senator Schiff, your personal wealth reporting indicates a total value of $16 million amassed upon a legislative paycheck, encompassing a $1 million residence within Burbank you acquired 4 months following your legislative vote regarding entertainment sector tax incentives. Sir, I possess a packet designated for you. It rests inside this package. It remains absent from today's schedule, but assuming you interfere a single additional time, I shall unseal it. Schiff leaned backward. He avoided leaning backward in the manner a legal representative leans backward following an overruled objection. He leaned backward in the manner an individual leans backward upon realizing for the initial instance in a considerable period that he occupies the incorrect environment. The balcony observed this. The recording lenses observed this as well. Cotton observed this as well, permitting himself a brief half-second of reaction before stifling it. Tulsi pivoted toward Pelosi once more. Madam Speaker, during 1987, you stood atop this chamber floor and proclaimed, quoting your introductory address, "I arrived here to advocate for the laboring households of San Francisco," end quotation. She lightly struck the picture featuring Robert Holcomb wearing his military combat coat upon the cardboard. This represents a laboring household, Madam Speaker. He labored for 31 years functioning as a dock worker following his return from Vietnam. His retirement fund vanished when the Dock Workers Trust failed during 2008. He has waited 14 consecutive years for national retirement security legislation. The Retirement Security Measure of 2022, which promised to reinstate his disbursements, cleared the Senate 68-32. It perished within the House because you, Madam Speaker, refused to schedule a ballot. The justification provided by your administration during that period stated, quoting your media director, "itinerary conflicts involving concluding legislative session activities," end quotation. Tulsi sealed the green packet. Madam Speaker, the male upon the cardboard represents the laboring household you arrived here to advocate for. The mansion inside the picture represents what you advocated for in reality. The necklace, the fourth turning point. A single bead snapped free from the string. It suspended by the fabric, swaying slightly. Pelosi failed to notice it. The hydration tumbler vibrated once more. This instant she avoided reaching for it. With complete deference, Director, Paul executes those financial choices. Madam Speakers, Tulsi stated softly, Paul Pelosi holds a community institution credential originating from the University of San Francisco. He stepped down from financial leasing services during 2017. The transactions have proceeded following his departure. The transactions have proceeded throughout the months he required recovering from a blunt force assault. The transactions have proceeded throughout the weeks he resided inside detention. Madam Speaker, either Paul Pelosi represents the most spectacular financier within contemporary American economic history, surpassing Warren Buffett every single quarter over 15 consecutive years from a medical mattress and a detention cell, or another individual is executing the transactions and slapping his identity across them. She allowed the statement to linger. Madam Speaker, explain to this panel who genuinely executes transactions within your spouse's portfolio. Pelosi offered no response. The quietness stretched for 9 consecutive seconds. C-SPAN kept the recording lens focused upon her visage for the entire 9. If your palms are trembling right now, if you have ever pondered how a government employee collecting a government paycheck ends up holding $250 million while a Vietnam veteran slumbers upon cardboard within her personal jurisdiction, type the phrase 3 million to 200 million in the space below. Press that thumbs up icon, crush subscribe, notifications active. The subsequent packet represents the item she failed to anticipate. Tulsi grabbed the third packet, colored black. The exterior remained blank. She avoided unsealing it right away. She positioned it atop the desk. She rested her palm upon it. Madam Speaker, we shall currently address the occurrences of July 2024, particularly the 11 days separating July 10th and July 21st. Pelosi's lips pursed tightly. Madam Speaker, upon July 10th of 2024, you initiated covert telephone conversations toward participants of the House Democratic Coalition. The conversations pertain to the campaign of Commander-in-Chief Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. The conversations pertain to whether he possessed the ability to triumph during November. The conversations pertain to whether he needed to remain inside the competition. 11 days subsequently, upon July 21st, Commander-in-Chief Biden exited. She unsealed the black packet. Inside rested a pile of communication logs. She refrained from reciting them. Madam Speaker, I refuse to recite the communication records. I refuse to recite the digital dispatches. I refuse to recite the compromised memorandums originating from your political action organization. The United States populace is invited to review those files. They currently constitute a segment of the formal documentation of this panel. She shifted the pile aside and extracted a loan picture from the packet. I must request that you examine this image. She shifted the picture across the desk. Pelosi avoided lifting it. The recording lens zoomed closer. The picture appeared vintage. The hues possessed the somewhat faded characteristic of 1970s photography. A male and a female stood atop the entrance of a cathedral. The male sported a dark blue outfit. He clutched a floral arrangement. He stood at 30 years of age, sporting dark hair, grinning. The female next to him wore a pristine matrimonial gown. She stood at 26 years of age. Her fingers rested upon the male's sleeve. Behind them, atop the cathedral entrance, stood the bridal attendants. The bridal attendants appeared joyous. The bride faced the recording lens. The female positioned directly beside the left of the bride, the primary attendant, was a 36-year-old female boasting brunette hair alongside a canary outfit. The primary attendant was Nancy Pelosi. Madam Speaker, Namasi, Tulsi stated, explain to this panel who wedded on that specific afternoon. Pelosi's hand trembled. The necklace shifted alongside it. That represents Joseph and Jill Biden. The 17th of June, 1977. You functioned as the primary attendant during Jill Biden's matrimony. Madam Speaker, you stood at 37 years of age. You had interacted with Joseph Biden for 5 consecutive years. You had interacted with Jill Biden for 2 consecutive years. The companionship linking the 4 of you, Paul, Nancy, Joe, Jill, would endure for 47 consecutive years. Tulsi extracted a second picture. This particular one originated from 2015. It depicted a burial service. Beau Biden's burial service at St. Anthony of Padua within Wilmington, Delaware. The picture displayed a massive queue of grievers stationed outside the cathedral. Near the front of the queue, dressed in a dark jacket, stood Nancy Pelosi. She had traveled via aircraft from San Francisco earlier that dawn. Madam Speaker, you participated in Beau Biden's burial service. You stood alongside Joseph Biden amidst the downpour for 2 consecutive hours. You authored his remembrance address partially. You contacted him via telephone every single holiday season for 47 consecutive years. You labeled Jill Biden your sibling within your 2008 autobiography, the edition we possess a version of inside this panel's archives, specifically page 241. She extracted a third file. Pelosi's autobiography cracked open to the specifics section. I quote directly, "Madam Speaker, Joe acts as the sibling I never possessed. Jill acts as the sibling I never possessed. They have functioned as my household within Washington for the duration I have resided here. They have appeared at every single celebration, every single matrimony, every single burial service. They transcend companions. They represent kin." End quotation. Your vocabulary, 2008. She sealed the publication. Madam Speaker, during July of 2024, you utilized 11 days upon the telephone obliterating your sibling. The chamber fell completely quiet. You avoided contacting him directly. You avoided visiting him personally. You avoided uttering a phrase directly to his visage. You contacted his associates. You contacted his financial contributors. You contacted the publication committee of the New York Times. Over 11 days, you orchestrated the partisan elimination of the individual who interred his offspring into your embrace during 2015. You lacked the basic integrity to inform him directly to his visage. Pelosi's mouth shifted. Zero noise emerged. Subsequently, during October of 2024, 3 weeks preceding the ballot, your personally selected substitute appeared poised to fail. You settled down for a conversation alongside the New York Times and you stated, quoting directly, "Had the commander-in-chief exited earlier, there might have emerged alternate contenders inside the competition." End quotation. Tulsi permitted that statement to settle for 5 consecutive seconds. Madam Speaker, you faulted him 3 weeks preceding the ballot, understanding that the vice president campaigned upon the solidarity of the coalition. You openly questioned the individual you forced out, and you accomplished it 3 weeks preceding the ballot, understanding the destruction it would inflict upon her campaign. Madam Speaker, that failed to represent a tactic. That represented disdain. I never desired. I care for Joe, I care for Jill," Pelosi stuttered. Madam Speaker, Dr. Jill Biden has avoided communicating with you since the 5th of November, 2024. She has declined to accept your calls. She has declined to participate in identical functions. She has avoided occupying the identical chamber alongside you for 15 consecutive months. During previous January, she provided a lone conversation to the Washington Post. The journalist questioned her regarding your companionship. I shall recite exactly what she stated. Tulsi extracted the publication. She avoided needing to glance at it. Quoting directly, "We functioned as companions for 50 years. It proved disheartening." End quotation. She placed the publication down. Madam Speaker, historical framing, functioned as companions. Proved disheartening. The sibling you documented within your autobiography avoids classifying you as kin any longer. The liberal segment of the balcony, the individuals sporting AOC badges and labor shirts, rested keeping their palms folded within their laps. A pair of them had started shedding tears. Not concerning Pelosi, but concerning Joe Biden, the elderly male resting in Wilmington who found himself forced out by the female who stood adjacent to his spouse wearing her matrimonial gown. An assistant occupying the third row, a youthful minority female sporting a Pelosi badge, rose upright and exited the committee chamber. The recording lenses documented her departure. Schiff remained staring at his palms. Pelosi stretched for the necklace, curled the string, and whimpered noticeably into the audio receiver. An additional bead snapped free, a pair of beads currently suspended by the fabric. They swayed whenever she shifted. With Director, with complete deference, Commander-in-Chief Biden's choice remained his personal decision. Madam Speaker, Tulsi stated, I possess the senatorship digital dispatches originating from those 11 days. They constitute a segment of the investigative files this panel summoned. He transmitted the statement, we must force him out. End quotation. Upon July 14th, he transmitted that statement toward you. You answered concurred, processing it. End quotation. You answered that toward him at exactly 11:17 during the nighttime upon July 14th, while Joseph Biden rested asleep inside the quarters at the Executive Mansion, while Dr. Jill Biden remained studying within the yellow oval space. While they remained oblivious, Schiff buried his visage into his palm. Madam Speaker, Donald Trump avoided snatching the 2024 ballot. You snatched it directly from your personal coalition, directly from the individual who interred his offspring into your embrace. If your spirit feels shattered right now, if you recall when Joe Biden interred his offspring amidst the downpour during 2015, and Nancy Pelosi stood adjacent to him within that queue for 2 consecutive hours, drop the phrase "the brother" into the comment section below. Type it out completely. Press thumbs up, crush subscribe. The subsequent packet represents the one America viewed upon live broadcasts and failed to erase from memory. Tulsi unsealed the 4th packet, colored crimson. The exterior appeared basic. State of the Union, the 4th of February 2020, combined assembly. She avoided extracting a schedule. She extracted 4 distinct pictures. She positioned them upon the desk sequentially. The initial picture displayed a 100-year-old minority male resting inside a mobility device. He sported his vintage military attire. His identity belonged to Charles McGee. He completed 136 tactical missions during the Second World War, operating alongside the Tuskegee aviators. He received notification upon returning home following the conflict that he lacked permission to dine near the food station situated at the aviation facility where he practiced. He persevered through everything. He observed his nation transform. The evening this picture emerged, he occupied the balcony of the United States House of Representatives, observing the Commander-in-Chief of the United States proclaim his advancement toward the status of Brigadier General. The subsequent picture displayed a 4-year-old minority female sporting a rose-colored outfit. Her identity belonged to Janiyah Davis. She resided within Philadelphia. Her maternal figure had pressed the outfit twice that dawn. Her maternal figure had utilized 2 transit coaches and a locomotive to reach Washington. They received notification Janiyah was acquiring an educational grant. They lacked notification it would be proclaimed upon live television. The tiny female rested upon her maternal figure's lap whenever the Commander-in-Chief uttered her identity. The Commander-in-Chief presented her with a National Advancement Grant to participate in the academy her maternal figure had remained queued for since Janiyah turned 2. The 3rd picture displayed a specialized military officer sporting his formal attire. His identity belonged to Townsend Williams. He had recently finished his 4th tactical deployment inside Afghanistan. He had avoided viewing his spouse and pair of offspring for 7 consecutive months. The Commander-in-Chief had coordinated for him to stroll outward from the staging area and astonish his household upon live television. The picture displayed him wrapped inside the embrace of his pair of offspring. His spouse placed her palm against his spine. She avoided glancing toward the recording lens. She remained focused upon her spouse's visage. She believed he still resided within Kandahar. The 4th picture displayed an elderly male sporting formal evening attire alongside his spouse. His identity belonged to Rush Limbaugh. A pair of days prior, his medical professional notified him he possessed terminal stage 4 pulmonary carcinoma, possessing 6 months or perhaps a year. That evening, he arrived at the State of the Union oblivious the Commander-in-Chief prepared to present him with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. His spouse shed tears whenever the decoration found placement encircling his throat. His palms trembled. He perished 14 months subsequently. Tulsi arranged the 4 pictures forming a line spanning the testimony desk. Madam Speaker, the evening these 4 citizens received recognition atop the floor of the United States House of Representatives, You stood exactly 8 feet directly behind the Commander-in-Chief of the United States while he finalized his address upon live television facing 40 million citizens. You ripped the address straight down the middle. She avoided extracting the iconic picture capturing the ripping. She lacked any necessity to do so. Madam Speaker, I refuse to inquire why you ripped the address. You addressed that inquiry throughout media conversations. You declared it represented, quoting directly, the polite action to execute considering the alternative, end quotation. I plan to pose a separate inquiry. She lightly struck the picture featuring Charles McGee. Madam Speaker, whenever you ripped the address, did you recognize that a single sheet you ripped proclaimed the advancement of a Tuskegee aviator toward brigadier general? Pelosi stuttered. I lacked the opportunity to review the address beforehand. Madam Speaker, you possessed a duplicate. The Speaker receives the duplicate. The Speaker grips the duplicate throughout the entirety of the speech. The duplicate you ripped represents the duplicate you gripped. Pelosi offered no response. Madam Speaker, did you recognize that a single sheet you ripped presented a national educational grant toward a 4-year-old minority female originating from Philadelphia? Quietness. Tulsi lightly struck the picture featuring Janiah Davis. Madam Speaker, Janiah Davis sits at 10 years of age currently. She resides within Philadelphia. She participates in a community charter academy, the specific one her maternal figures struggled to register her within after the National Educational Grant. The Commander-in-Chief proclaimed that evening found itself bound within legal disputes for 2 consecutive years. The legal disputes originated from the District of Columbia and Pennsylvania chief prosecutors, both Democrats who contested the executive power supporting the educational grant. Madam Speaker, do you understand what Janiah Davis asked her maternal figure during March of 2020, 3 weeks following that broadcast? Quietness. She questioned her maternal figure, quoting directly, "Did the female object to me attending the academy?" End quotation. She stood at 4 years of age. She lacked comprehension regarding what a duplicate copy represented. She lacked comprehension regarding what partisan performance art represented. She comprehended that a female ripped apart the sheet carrying her identity upon it. Pelosi glanced downward toward the picture featuring the tiny female. Her gaze avoided lingering there extensively. Tulsi lightly struck the third picture. Madam Speaker, Sergeant Townsend Williams, Specialized Forces, 4th Deployment. The sheet you ripped contained the astonishing reunion alongside his household. Did you recognize this? Zero response. Tulsi lightly struck the fourth picture. Madam Speaker, Rush Limbaugh, terminal stage 4 pulmonary carcinoma. The sheet you ripped contained the Presidential Medal of Freedom proclamation. He perished 14 months subsequently. His widow addressed that evening openly exactly a single time during 2023 atop the Mike Gallagher audio broadcast. I plan to recite exactly what she stated. Tulsi extracted a lone piece of parchment originating from the packet. Quoting directly, Rush viewed the broadcast that evening resting inside his medical mattress. He observed the address getting ripped. He pivoted toward me and stated, "That female just ripped apart the sheet that awarded me a decoration." Afterward, he chuckled because he represented Rush. However, I avoided chuckling. I understood he was perishing, and the female positioned behind the Commander-in-Chief had recently ripped apart the singular open recognition my spouse would inevitably acquire from the nation he adored. He avoided mentioning it ever again. However, I ponder upon it every single day. End quotation, Catherine Limbaugh, 2023. Tulsi placed the parchment down. Madam Speaker, during your introductory remarks earlier today, exactly 58 minutes prior, you branded the Republican coalition a fatalistic sect. You branded traditional voters participants within authoritarianism. She motioned toward the 4 pictures. Madam Speaker, a fatalistic sect avoids advancing a 100-year-old minority military veteran. A fatalistic sect avoids presenting an educational grant toward a 4-year-old minority female. A fatalistic sect avoids transporting a military officer home originating from Afghanistan toward his offspring. A fatalistic sect avoids securing a decoration encircling the throat of a perishing male. She stared directly at Pelosi. You executed the singular ripping within the assembly that evening. The necklace, the fifth turning point. 3 additional beads snapped loose from the string, 5 beads currently suspended by the fabric swaying noticeably alongside every single breath she inhaled. Pelosi stretched for the hydration tumbler using her left palm. Her right palm remained fixed near her throat. The hydration tumbler elevated midway toward her lips and halted. The palm trembled too intensely. She placed the tumbler back down. Liquid cascaded across the testimony desk and gathered completely encircling the 4 pictures. She avoided attempting to wipe it away. Janiyah Davis's rose-colored outfit inside the picture gradually grew deeper in color wherever the liquid contacted it. If you recall that evening during February of 2020, if you observed her rip it apart upon live broadcasts and you remain mindful of it, type the phrase "she ripped it apart" below. Crush that thumbs up icon immediately, subscribe and activate notifications. The subsequent packet represents the fatal strike. It represents the one she has harbored terror regarding for 24 consecutive years. Tulsi grabbed the 5th packet. It appeared black, displaying a crimson unsealing indicator. The insignia belonging to the office representing the Director of National Intelligence stretched across the exterior. The file inside remained restricted as top secret for 24 consecutive years. She ruptured the subsequent closure. Madam Speaker, we shall currently address the dawn of the 4th of September, 2002. Pelosi's visage altered. The previous stages had inflicted pain. This specific one accomplished something unique. Madam Speaker, upon the dawn of the 4th of September, 2002, you journeyed toward the central hub of the Central Intelligence Agency situated within Langley, Virginia. You functioned as the senior Democrat atop the House Permanent Select Committee focusing on intelligence. You participated in a restricted briefing session. The briefing session found execution via the principal legal officer of the CIA Counterterrorism Hub. The briefing session endured for 95 minutes. The topic concerning the briefing session focused upon the questioning of a detained radical identified as Abu Zubaydah. She hesitated. Do you recall the topics debated inside that chamber, Madam Speaker? I fail to remember the precise. Madam Speaker, utilizing the Commander-in-Chief's permission, this panel unsealed the session transcript representing that gathering. I clutch it firmly inside my grip. I prepare to recite it completely into the documentation. She elevated the file upward. The top secret marking appeared struck through using crimson ink. Madam Speaker, I plan to recite to you the topics debated inside that chamber. I plan to utilize the exact terminology belonging to the session transcript. I recommend you prepare yourself. Pelosi offered no response. At 9:14 during the dawn, the CIA principal legal officer initiated the briefing session by outlining the capture of Abu Zubaydah during a March of 2002. He outlined Mr. Zubaydah's defiance against conventional questioning. Afterward, he outlined, and the session transcript employs this precise terminology, escalated questioning methodologies slated for permission to deploy against the individual. End quotation. He detailed the methodologies. There existed 10 of them. The 10th methodology involved simulated drowning. Tulsi avoided lifting her gaze originating from the file. The briefing session detailed thoroughly the implementation of simulated drowning, the platform onto which the individual required securing, the inclination at which the platform required tilting, the fabric slated for positioning covering the individual's visage, the liquid slated for pouring, the temporal span, the repetition rate, the health observation amidst the operation, the indicators the questioners required monitoring for, the protocol for terminating the gathering assuming the health professional concluded the individual experienced cardiovascular failure. She flipped the sheet. The session transcript documents, quoting directly, Pelosi N., Senior Minority Representative HPSCI, active throughout entirety, 95 minutes. Inquiries posed, 0. Protests logged, 0. Apprehensions voiced concerning methodology implementation, 0. End quotation. She sealed the file. Madam Speaker, the Central Intelligence Agency representing the United States utilized simulated drowning upon Abu Zubaydah 83 times throughout the month of August 2002. The simulated drowning transpired breaching the Treaty Against Cruelty, which the United States validated during 1988. The simulated drowning found detailed description directed toward you a single month following its commencement. You voiced 0 protests. You authored 0 correspondence. You noticed nobody inside your coalition. You traveled home originating from Langley and you avoided mentioning it for 7 consecutive years. I received guarantees via legal counsel that the procedures. Madam Speaker, during April of 2009, 7 consecutive years subsequently, whenever this narrative surfaced within the open media, you hosted a media briefing upon national broadcasts alongside journalists positioned facing you. You stood at a rostrum inside this identical structure. You stated, and I plan to utilize your precise terminology, I lacked notification that simulated drowning found implementation. The CIA educated us concerning judicial perspectives, excluding concrete implementations. End quotation. She extracted a second file originating from the packet. Madam Speaker, 6 days following that media briefing, your peer Democrat, leader of Central Intelligence Leon Panetta, authored a dispatch toward the United States Congress. He had functioned as Executive Mansion Principal Administrative Officer for Bill Clinton. He had achieved validation as CIA leader via Barack Obama. He harbored 0 partisan motivation to oppose you. He opposed you regardless. I plan to recite his dispatch. She elevated the sheet. Quoting directly, the CIA files within our custody demonstrate that Speaker Pelosi received briefings concerning the escalated questioning methodologies thoroughly during September of 2002. The files remain correct. The files mirror reality. End quotation, verified by Leon Panetta, the 15th of May, 2009. The file lowered back down. Madam Speaker, you stood at a rostrum inside this structure facing recording lenses, facing the United States populace, and you fed falsehoods to the nation concerning whether you recognized the United States administration utilized simulated drowning against captives beneath your supervision. The leader of the Central Intelligence Agency, your personal coalition's leader, opposed you formally on the documentation. You possess 0 history of offering remorse. You possess 0 history of rectifying the open documentation. You possess 0 history of facing consequences. The committee chamber fell completely quiet in a manner that the prior stages failed to generate. This represented the quietness of a crowd that remained oblivious until that specific second concerning the complete silhouette of the female occupying the testimony seat. Tulsi's tone diminished further. Madam Speaker, you initiated the impeachment of Donald Trump during 2019 utilizing the justification that he lacked trustworthiness to deliver reality toward the United States populace. The individual you claimed lacked trustworthiness avoided feeding falsehoods concerning American cruelty ever. You executed exactly that formally upon the documentation. Verified via your personal coalition's CIA leader during 2009, 17 years prior. And you possess 0 history of rectifying it. In the foremost row, Pete Hegseth rose upright. He avoided uttering any phrases initially. He strolled across the center of the committee chamber. He transported a singular item within his right grip. It comprised a pair of shined military footwear, official distribution. An identification marker remained affixed onto the strings utilizing a snippet of dark fabric. He positioned the footwear upon the center of the testimony desk, exactly 6 inches facing Nancy Pelosi. He stood adjacent to the footwear. He avoided glancing toward Pelosi. He glanced toward the presiding official. Subsequently, he vocalized, Madam Speaker, this footwear belongs to Officer Howard Liebengood, United States Capitol Police. Officer Liebengood possessed a top-secret security clearance. He reviewed the post-action summaries concerning the escalated questioning initiative during 2007 whenever those summaries found presentation to Capitol Police Command staff meant for security intelligence functions. Hegseth's tone sounded exceptionally soft. Upon the 9th of January 2021, exactly 3 days following the breach upon the Capitol, Officer Liebengood ended his personal existence. Exactly 6 days preceding his demise, he expressed to his spouse, and I quote her testimony provided toward the Defense Department during October of 2024, "I fail to comprehend how the individuals who possess knowledge, who possess true knowledge, accomplished absolutely nothing." End quotation. He avoided shifting the footwear. His widow requested I transport these items here this morning, he stated, and these constitute her exact phrases. Allow her to view them. End quotation. I have effectively transported them. He pivoted. He strolled backward toward his seat. He sat downward. Pelosi avoided glancing toward the footwear. She lacked the capacity to do so. Her gaze remained fixed upon the desk. Her palms remained resting inside her lap, concealed. The necklace, the string, following 5 intervals of twisting, surrendered completely. The fabric fractured audibly. 26 beads tumbled across the glossy timber of the testimony desk. The initial bead impacted, subsequently the second, subsequently the third, followed by 100 milliseconds of quietness. Subsequently, 23 beads simultaneously all at once. The audio upon C-SPAN proved entirely distinct from any audio the network had ever transmitted. 26 beads sliding atop timber. A portion of them slid heading toward Pelosi. A portion of them slid heading toward the footwear. 3 of them slid straight off the border of the desk. The recording lenses documented the initial one rebounding atop the stone ground. Subsequently the second, subsequently the third. Pelosi avoided shifting for 9 consecutive seconds. Subsequently, she positioned her palms covering her visage. If you have endured to this point, if you remain engaged with this hearing, type the term truth inside the comment section below, merely the lone term. Type it completely, press subscribe. Crush thumbs up. The concluding remarks follow immediately. The rising remains impending. You are observing American history unfold. You shall narrate to your descendants concerning this hearing. Senator Cotton permitted the quietness to endure for 15 complete seconds. Subsequently, he struck the mallet gently, lacking intent to command the chamber to order. The chamber currently existed in perfect order. He struck it to signal a shift. The panel shall suspend operations for 15 minutes. Madam Speaker, upon our reconvening, Director Gabbard shall present her concluding remarks. You shall possess the chance to answer. We remain suspended. Strike. Pelosi avoided rising upright. Her personnel approached the testimony desk to assist her. Schiff rose upright, glanced toward her, sat backward down. He lacked comprehension concerning the appropriate action to execute. The beads scattered everywhere. A youthful female assistant started collecting them, utilizing both palms and a yellow folder she had extracted from her satchel. She avoided establishing visual contact alongside the recording lenses. The footwear rested exactly where Hegseth had positioned them. Tulsi avoided vacating her seat. She avoided lifting the yellow folder. She avoided reviewing her mobile device. She rested, keeping her palms crossed atop the military notebook positioned facing her, and she remained waiting. Whenever the mallet impacted, once more signaling the termination of the suspension, Pelosi occupied the testimony desk again. She had swapped her top garment. Her personnel had fetched a clean one originating from the suite down the corridor. The beads vanished. Her locks appeared flattened. The cosmetic applications appeared refreshed. However, the inflammation encircling her pupils remained obvious to the recording lenses. She had shed tears inside the suspension chamber. 3 of her prior speaker assistants had shed tears alongside her. She sat at 85 years of age, and she sat unaccompanied inside the chamber in a manner she had never felt unaccompanied throughout 50 consecutive years. Schiff occupied the testimony desk 0 longer. He found replacement via her private representative, a corporate legal counsel originating from Williams and Connolly. Schiff occupied the balcony within the second row, keeping his cranium angled downward. Cotton, Director Gabbard, concluding remarks. Tulsi rose upright. She avoided approaching the testimony desk this specific instance. She stood beside the D&I desk exactly 20 feet separating from Pelosi and vocalized directly spanning the center of the committee chamber. Madam Speaker, I arrived here this morning functioning as the Director of National Intelligence utilizing the interrogation privileges bestowed by this panel. I arrived to question you concerning an impeachment you initiated during 2019 relying upon an informant grievance that found fabrication utilizing indirect proof and ideologically prejudiced testifiers. Exactly 3 weeks prior, I unsealed those documents. The United States populace has reviewed them. The justification for that impeachment, Madam Speaker, has disintegrated completely. She hesitated. I avoided arriving here to argue concerning your spouse or your riches or your address or your companionship alongside Joseph Biden or the briefing session you endured inside the subterranean level of CIA Central Operations during 2002. She hesitated once more. However, you introduced the topic of reliability, Madam Speaker. Within your introductory remarks, you labeled me a Kremlin asset. You labeled me a betrayer. You declared I belonged behind bars. You weaponized the reliability of your 4-decade career to undermine me preceding me posing a single inquiry. She pivoted slightly, heading toward the recording lenses. The United States populace tuning in this evening possesses the capability to evaluate that assertion versus your spouse's intoxicated driving alongside another female inside your automobile while you raised glasses inside Brussels, versus the disparities separating $3 million and $280 million atop the identical government paycheck, versus the 11 days during July whenever you orchestrated the partisan termination of an individual who interred his offspring into your embrace, versus the 4 sheets you ripped upon live broadcasts because you lacked the fortitude to tolerate that the individual occupying the rostrum possessed your identity upon his crimson cap, versus the dawn at Langley whenever you endured 95 minutes of simulated drowning briefing sessions and subsequently stood facing recording lenses 7 years subsequently and fed falsehoods concerning it, while your personal coalition's CIA leader labeled you deceitful on the formal documentation. She avoided elevating her tone. Madam Speaker, I refuse to label you a Kremlin asset. I refuse to label you an authoritarian. I refuse to label you a fatalistic sect. I plan to assign you the singular designation that the proof inside this packet validates. She elevated the yellow folder. You represent a government employee who transformed into a private treasury. You represent a sibling who transformed into a backstabber. You represent a defender of the foundational charter who ripped the foundational charter's most documented sheet upon live broadcasts. You represent a testifier who fed falsehoods to your personal citizens concerning cruelty they executed bearing their identity. You represent a speaker who terminated an impeachment proceeding exactly 3 weeks prior whenever files found unsealing that confirmed the proceeding found foundation upon a falsehood. She placed the folder down. Madam Speaker, you desired to thrust Donald Trump onto the witness stand today. Donald Trump remains absent from here. You occupy this space. And throughout 2 hours, I have established the argument opposing him utilizing your personal jewelry, your spouse's arrest portrait, your Napa wine estate, the military veteran situated upon Market Street, the matrimonial picture originating from the 17th of June, ACS, in 1777. The 4 sheets originating from the 4th of February 2020. The session transcript originating from the 4th of September 2002. Officer Liebengood's footwear. She hesitated. I quote the scripture upon which I affirmed my pledge functioning as Director of National Intelligence, the Bhagavad Gita. Satyameva Jayate. Reality solely prevails. Tulsi sat backward down for 5 consecutive seconds. The committee chamber generated absolutely zero noise completely. Subsequently, the female occupying the mobility device situated in the rear row, Serena Liebengood, the widow, rose upright. Her metallic badge reflected the ceiling illumination. The military veterans occupying the second row rose upright. The balcony rose upright. The media brigade rose upright. 50% of Pelosi's liberal advocates rose upright. There existed zero clapping. Clapping proves unsuitable inside a Senate committee chamber. There existed solely the rising. 300 individuals resting upon their footwear amidst quietness. The suitable tribute meant for a testifier who had delivered reality while under a sworn pledge. Adam Schiff, resting inside the second row, keeping his cranium angled downward, avoided rising upright. Pelosi's palms rested inside her lap. She avoided glancing upward. Cotton delayed until the rising had exhausted its complete duration. Subsequently, he struck the mallet. The panel shall accept Director Gabbard's presented files straight into the formal documentation. Madam Speaker, you find yourself excused. This proceeding stands concluded. Strike. The beads remained atop the testimony desk. So did the footwear. The liquid atop the desk had evaporated, leaving a subtle mark shaped resembling a tiny female's rose-colored outfit. C-SPAN shattered its single-day viewership milestone approaching 11 that evening. The Liebengood footwear picture, captured via a syndicate photographer within the center of the committee chamber, occupied the cover sheet of every single publication across the nation preceding dawn. Pelosi's administration released a declaration near 6:15 the subsequent dawn. The speaker stays dedicated upon her legacy initiatives and refuses to answer partisan performance art. She scrubbed 4 weeks of open engagements. Her personnel ceased answering media queries preceding Thursday. Adam Schiff avoided answering journalists for 72 consecutive hours. Upon the fourth day, his financial reporting experienced unauthorized release toward Politico. He released a declaration stating he planned retirement nearing the conclusion of his active tenure. Jill Biden dispatched a digital post containing a single word approaching 3:42 during the dawn, exactly 6 hours following the hearing's conclusion: truth. She avoided dispatching additional posts throughout that week. Pete Hegseth published a singular picture approaching 7. The subsequent dawn, utilizing the Defense Department's formal profile. The picture displayed the vacant testimony desk, beads, footwear, liquid mark. There existed zero description. Senator Cotton proclaimed the subsequent Monday that the Senate Select Committee focusing on intelligence planned to restart the 2002 CIA briefing session inquiry utilizing assistance originating from Director Panetta, who consented to provide testimony. Janiyah Davis's maternal figure provided a singular conversation toward the Philadelphia Inquirer that specific Sunday. She stated her female offspring had viewed the hearing. Whenever questioned concerning what Janiyah had stated, the maternal figure answered. She noted the female shed tears. She noted perhaps the female feels regret presently. I instructed her child. Occasionally regret arrives excessively delayed. Tulsi transitioned backward toward the office representing the Director of National Intelligence. She provided zero media conversations. The beads found collection via Capitol maintenance workers nearing the termination of the daytime shift, 26 completely in sum. They found placement inside a tiny verification pouch and transferred possession toward the Senate security official. Their ultimate destination avoids residing within the open documentation. There existed zero banishment, zero stepping down, zero penal indictments. There existed solely the files, and the files failed to become sealed again. Did Tulsi Gabbard overstep the boundary? Or did Nancy Pelosi ultimately confront the precise reckoning she dodged for 4 decades? Has the epic of shielded partisan aristocrats ultimately attained its fracturing threshold? Deposit your ruling into the comment section below. Distribute this clash to reveal reality and subscribe preceding the computational system suppressing this content.